Clear Thinking by Shane Parrish. No one ever taught us how to think, but thinking and decision making is somewhat the most important tool we should have, even if you are a professional or if you are a businesswoman or if you are just breathing. I think that really means you have to do some level of thinking to be alive and to be survived. We think decision making is all about big decisions. Before we start more into the detail, I'll start with two stories or two incidents. First, about Andrew Carnegie, maybe you know from Napoleon Hill books and all that. He's a legendary billionaire. So, when he was on a junior or inexperienced person, he was working in Pennsylvania Railroad. And one of the day, his boss was leave, and the bad truck wrecked there and gridlocked the system. Like the whole railroad was gridlocked by bad trucks. So people were waiting for a decision, and boss is not available. So Carnegie is in charge. So he think about multiple option and he give one message in his boss name: burn the cars, burn the cargo cars, because taking it out is more expensive and more opportunity cost is there. So best decision for that time was burn the car. When his boss come next day and he learn about that incident, he used the same approach for future scenarios. He learned from Carnegie, even though he's a junior or Carnegie is working under him. He used that scenario. That is one decision. Keep that in mind. We'll talk about another scenario which happened in 1986 when Ronald Reagan was president and NASA was trying to send its US space shuttle Challenger. And they were planning to make that happen when Ronald Reagan was addressing the union. He was doing his union address. They want to, but that day, because there was an engineering team available there. So Engineer Morton told that that day the temperature is not sufficient enough for O-ring to work. So the temperature, the cold is having a difficulty there. But the political and the leadership was not able to engage because they want that to happen because Ronald Reagan, there was a political importance for a space mission. So at last they overruled the suggestions or the engineer, the contractor engineer, Mr. Morton. And you know the history. After 73 seconds after launching, US Space Challenger just exploded. So that was also a decision. You remember the famous, we have one summary in our book earlier about the same. So Richard Feynman will come with a bottle of water, a glass of water with O-ring and explain that scenario at all. So that's how the decision making is. So we come across with lot of different opportunities for decision making. So we need somehow a guidance or some approach of thinking. And there are a lot of biases and noises in our thinking. So Shane Parrish is like grateful to have teachers like Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger. If you don't know him, he is also a partner for Warren Buffett, and also Daniel Kahneman, if you famously known as like who won the Nobel Prize in economics and all. So Shane Parrish was being learned from all these mentors. So based on those experience and on in his research, he compiled it in a book, Clear Thinking. Let's get started. So part one: enemies of clear thinking. So rationality or being rational is somehow we feel that that's very critical, important things for decision making. But we are predictably irrational. If you read the behavioral economics and all, you understand that. So first we have to train to the moment because there are a lot of automatic responses we have. First of all, like say someone encroach in your home at say at late night, there is an automated response. And also, like if you're driving on a highway, someone just passed the track which is you feel like it is not supposed to do at all. You have a default scenario. Maybe you'll use your abuse words and all this. Maybe the other person will not hear it, but you will just shout inside the car, right? So there are a lot of emotional defaults there. And also, uh, first of all, there are emotional default is somewhere where, like, instead of having rationality, we somehow rely on emotions to decide. That's what Daniel Kahneman's behavioral economics is all based on the same. So, for example, if you are sleep deprived, if you are hungry, if you are fatigued, then that is something like an opportunity for emotion to take over. When you are angry, people used to tell you should not make a decision. When you are sleep deprived, the same. Usually, even the angriness, if Brené Brown book and all, if you're angry or being angry, somehow an expression of helplessness. So that's about emotional default. Emotionally, we are hardwired to respond like that. Then there is ego default, appearing and showing more than what we are. Like, for example, if you want to understand whether you are an ego default, one example is that, like, even somebody come and tell you one example, you will simply tell because it is not coming from someone higher, is someone lower than you in hierarchy. We feel like that's not supposed to be taken. That's one part of it. But if you really want to understand, if you have an ego default, there is something like what you are and what you want to show to the outside community. So if that is not something real, if you are faking it, you are going to put tremendous energy on what you are. A simple example to understand. For example, if you are going to a social event, if you feel so much fatigue by just going there, you are not doing any hard work. You are just going to that lot of people. You are going in together to the lot of people, but you are losing lot of energy. That simply means that your whole biology, chemistry, and physics of your body is trying to cope up and projecting something which you really not are. If you really what you are, then just be relaxed and stay there. But if that is not the case, you're putting too much energy on every incidental scenario to present you to other people. Okay, this is me. This is me. Every interaction, every transaction is happening like that. So that's about ego default. Then social default is another one. Social default is something like we somehow fit to the conformity of a decision. Like, for example, if you want to decide on something, we always try to decide faster when that is everybody's doing that. Like, okay, for example, if everybody is taking home loan to build a home, then you think that that is better to do than not taking the loan. Or similar happening to marriage and all other scenarios and all. We try to fit it in social default, even though you may be marrying the most wonderful person in the world. Maybe that's not ending there. Maybe you take it for granted like that. So that's about that conformity. We may somehow underperform if you think that if we stand out or if we become different approach. Okay, if all the company old CEOs done approach in one way and you are trying to suggest another way, you will have a resistance from social conformity telling that you are trying to avoid. There may be a chance for failure and you're rebelling against that. Then inertia, if you know the Newton's law and all, you know that an object will stay on its status until and unless some force has been applied. So here there is a status quo. Inertia default telling that there is a status quo in your life. Maybe if you're working day and like there is the status quo is the least resistance position. So if you are going to change a total culture in a in a in an office or in a company, then you are going to change the status quo of that. So that is why people are complacent. People are in comfort zone also. Like they just do it to do. They don't want to take the next level. They don't want to put more effort to your work to overperform and all. So there is a status quo default or inertia default that is making us to take decision. If there is some decision which can improve your career, if there is some say something to study or something that will change the status quo of your life, you have to spend too much time on studying that one and all these things, that is making you inertia default. Okay, stay where you are, don't have to disturb the status quo. These are the four enemies of clear thinking. Part 2, building strength. We understand the enemies now. Now we have to build strength to ourselves. So it has multiple parts. First of all, self accountability. Complain not. You don't have to complain about the incidents or scenarios or something. You don't have to blame on others. You have to take accountability of that scenario. That is the first input to build strength. Second thing is about self knowledge. To understand your strengths and weaknesses, you have to know your vulnerabilities and all these things. So if you understand where you are coming from, that will give you an exposure to go to people which you don't know, or you understand this is my strength, you can put more efforts on that. Self control. Like everybody, naturally we have our own fears and desires that will always come into in between the decision making. So if you have a strength enough to master your fears and desires, that is somehow like, another way if you call it, it's like a discipline or self control. Self confidence, trusting your abilities. The point is that here, confidence, self confidence, and arrogance is almost staying somewhere close. Confidence, self confidence is somehow you are sure that you can do it. So that is something which allows someone to just quit a job and then finding a company, because their self confidence on themselves that okay, I can do this. But the same self confidence, if you start a company and you think that okay, I am the only person who make all the decision, whatever I'm doing I'm right, you may lose clients, you may lose your employees and also there is a small fraction of trigger between this confidence, self confidence and arrogance. And third thing to build strength is to set standard, like raising your standard. Because one day Shane Parrish come to a remote location when he was working in intelligence agency and all. He tried to explain a scenario to a remote office and people were listening. And one time, after some time, one manager, I think he's the leader over there, he just told Shane, okay, stop. Then he stand up. Before doing that, he told Shane, if you don't really know what you are telling, you should not speak. First of all, you should understand what you are telling. That's important. That's something about communication. But what he tried to do is that he stand up and he explained the same thing what Shane was explaining, but in a different way. Later on, Shane go and meet this guy, this manager, and he told that we have a standard. I'm trying to put you in standard. That was a lesson. But another similar example was happening like when Shane was working. One of his subordinate colleague, maybe this incident is relatable to a lot of you. If you're working as a manager or someone, a lot of people will make some document or some reports or something and send you for review. And same thing happened for Shane also. He sent a report, draft report to Shane and telling that for your review and approval. But Shane understand that this is not at all acceptable. He has to work too much. He has to put too much effort to make it correct. He was thinking, what should I do? Because there was something about exemplars and all. So Shane was too much explained about Henry Kissinger. So Kissinger was having explained a similar scenario when he was working in administration and all. One guy come and tell you this is the report. Then Kissinger asked a question: is this the best effort or best report you can make? Is this the best you have? Then that guy think about it and he take out the report and make the work on it and submit again. And that time Kissinger asked again, is this the best in your report. Then he doubt again, he go back, and the third day he submitted the report. That time when Kissinger asked him, is this the best, he told me yes. Then Kissinger looked at it and it was good. Same thing what he applied to his subordinate as well, and it worked as well. So building strength is some way like internally building strength to the outside team members, and building such a level of trust, confidence, transparency, and standards inside the company, wherever you are putting your decision making, even if you are a CEO or a line manager or a supervisor. Part 3 about managing weakness. In USS Benfold, Michael Absroff was a head of that ship, military ship, and he was feeling like there was a lot of conflict happening inside the ship among the communities between sailors and the crew members and all. He tried to understand what is the situation, and he tried to understand the what is the root cause and all. Then he find out, or he pulled out, he make it a conclusion to one topic, which is where a food is being served in the ship. And at some point in time, like all the normal sailors, they were be just in the queue, but the higher officers came, they will just not stand in the queue, they go directly and get the food and come back. It looks very normal because that was a social default in that ship, but that was affecting a lot of, because if you remember our earlier book talking about boarding in through the economy and all, we have a book earlier about the same, so you will understand our earlier book summary about scarcity brain is explaining the same. So the point is, what he tried to do, Michael Absroff, he one day he just go to the last of the queue and waited behind the last person in the sailor. And the guy who was taking care of this one, he told to general, you should go to the front. He told no. He did not take his suggestion, he stayed there, and he waited and he take all the people and he take the food as normal. That was somehow an example for the other people to understand their weakness, that is he's trying, and that really improved the scenario. So overcoming weakness, the part 3 about managing weakness. Once you build the strength, you have to manage the weakness of the scenario, weakness in the environment as well. Like, you don't have to be like rabbits which always look for each and everything the situation. It is not the situation for, because rabbits are always being vigilant on each and every scenarios. But sure, they should have a safeguards, avoid decision making as we mentioned in unfavorable circumstances like hungry, angry, because even the alcoholic community was trying to tell that HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. When you are having the urge to get the alcoholic drink, just think, are you hungry? Are you angry? Are you lonely? Or are you tired? If you get an answer to any of this, attend that one instead of going to get your bottle of alcohol. That was the thing. So replace. Another point is that Daniel Kahneman famously told to Shane that best way to just change a habit is not something like a willpower or something. Instead, put a rule on it. Like for example, I recently come across a diet which was telling the same. Like we have to drink one day protein, carbohydrate. That is maybe a simple thing, but Kahneman was trying to tell is that when someone call for an appointment over the phone, I mean, he will not tell yes. Whoever calling to get a decision over the phone, Kahneman rule is not to tell yes. So he'll tell, okay, let me think about it and get back to you. And similar thing, if you have a bad habit of drinking sugar or something, you put a rule, okay, I will only drink or eat chocolates on Wednesday, example. So that rule can somehow survive more than something like an ethical standard or anything, a willpower or something. Willpower normally require constant decision making, but environment, like for example, if you are not a good reader. It's better you go and include in a book club. That environment will take you or understand the book club. Or for example, if you are watching a lot of book summaries and all, like what we are doing. So somehow that environment is creating, like you all people, subscriber over there is creating an environment for us to make a summary next week. Even though some days maybe it is not that much comfortable or inertia default or complacency may be there, but there is a rule. You should put a video per week. If that rule is going to work, then this should be happening. So that's the thing. So food ordering also, like same thing. When there is a problem on a particular scenario, like there is a waiter and there is a chef and a line cook. When there is a problem, you should first try to understand, like what Michael Abshroff was trying to do. So there will be some people who can best understand the situation. Then fix the environment based on that. Sometime maybe the food customer is unhappy. Either maybe the food is bad or maybe the way it is served is bad. But if you want to understand about food, best person to check is chef. But if you understand about how the service is bad, then check that. So that's the thing. Also, there are multiple other ways as well, like checklist. If you follow, like checklists are everywhere, especially in aeronautical industries and all, where pilots use everywhere, even the projects and other things. We will have some checklist where we will make sure that there will be some standard operating procedure. So people will try to stick it. It is not something like they like it or don't like. If there is a rule, okay, follow the checklist before you start the engine of the aeroplane. Then that will work. Even lot of testing procedure, everything will have such a checklist. So managing weakness, lot of ideas, lot of safeguards, something about rules, something about discipline. Think about it. I hope you can improvise further on that. Part 4, clear thinking in action. During Vietnam War or after Vietnam War, Jim Collins, the famous writer who write Good to Great, he got a chance to interview Admiral or Colonel Stockdale. He asked him, what was the the thing which make you survive, or what makes the prisoners there survived in the Vietnam prison, and who are the people who perished? So Stockdale explained, the people who perished was the people who has faith. Maybe it's a counterintuitive topic. So what he mean is that they will tell that, okay, we will get out from prison in Christmas. Then they will tell, okay, we will get out in the Easter. Then they will tell Thanksgiving, then Christmas. So after some years, they will lose the faith, and that faith itself is coming back to them, and they will lose their hope, and then they will. But instead, whoever survives, Stockdale is telling, they understand that, okay, they are in a problem. They are in a prison that is real. A more realistic expert in decision making and called their role realism. To understand the realistic scenario and then take it further from there. So that's people who survive. So when the stakes are low, you can act fast. Because if somebody come for a decision, or if you're subordinate, if doing it is not going to take much stakes, much impact, like what Andrew Carnegie was doing in the beginning, like burn the cars. That opportunity cost is more better than just stopping the railroads for 3 days. But if stakes are high, that is going to take a big impact on the thing. Then you have to think it in other way. You have to act slow. So the first action in clear thinking is to define the problem. You have to define what is the problem. Then only you can understand. Because the point is that, for example, ASPCA, a dog welfare in United States, they used to find that there are 3 million dogs was being just give up to the shelters by their owners. 3 million dogs was put in. So they were found that only 1.4 million dogs were getting in, other 1 million was getting out. They were not getting shelters. So normally, if you want to make a decision on this one, what will you do? Maybe we will straight away think that, okay, all other shelters, I'm telling, they will think that, okay, maybe we need more shelters, or we may need more more places to improve and such thing. But one entity, one of the shelter in Los Angeles, I believe, they think it in other way. They try to make a different approach. Whenever there is an owner trying to give their pet dog to the shelter, they give an option: would you like to keep your dog? Would you prefer to keep it? And around 30 to 40 percentage of the people tell yes. Most of the time, the reason why they are leaving their dog is because they are not able to manage the expenses of their food or any other things like that. So it is always more feasible for even the ASPC and this, because taking care of the dog, spending money to the owner, and just some giving some dividends or like some support, financial support to the owner, is better than keeping. It is less cheaper economically as well if it is with the owner than in the shelter. And in another way, the dogs are getting shelters, and also the owners are having the pet. So the root cause, when they try to find the root cause, what is the root cause why these millions of dogs are getting out? The reason was that the owner was not able to manage. There may be multiple reasons, but if you cure that reason, then that problem is solved. Otherwise, if you keep giving to the shelters, more and more dogs will be there, some dogs will be still out. That is not going to solve the real problem. So you have to think about outside, or try to think deep on it. If you remember our books in our summary about Bezos blueprint, in Amazon meeting, when they start a meeting, before the meeting, around half of the time, if it is a 1 hour meeting, around half an hour, people will sit there silently looking at the reports. They will not talk in. They have to somehow digest and don't make to act fast. They have to think slowly and understand all the perspectives, everything, every possible scenarios, then only they talk. And that you can see the result in the company, the most customer centric company in the world, Amazon. And even in the book, Shane Parrish is telling it is better to do two meetings when you're making decision making instead of one meeting. One meeting to get all the ideas, second meeting to make decision. I'm sure you will not get a luxury to make such two meetings for every time. But if there is such an opportunity, you should make use of that, so that people will not be hurried to a decision. They will try to contribute conflicting ideas, and that will give you different approaches, different understanding of the principle, and you can do that. We'll end up with a famous quote from Kierkegaard. It is telling that life can be only understood when we look backward. But we have to look to live. You have to live forward. You cannot live backward. You have to live forward. But to understand the life, you have to look backwards. Like what Steve Jobs tell, you can only connect the dots by looking backwards. So more on the thinking in action. So we are much optimistic when doing the decision making. We don't want to be pessimistic. That is somehow our failure of decision making. We don't go to bad outcome principle. People always think that they are bad problem solvers. But the problem is that people always think that they should not have problem. They don't want to, they pray to not have problems or something like that. They don't take it like problem is part and parcel of life. So somehow, if they don't like the problem, so somehow the best decision making happen when you enjoy it. It is ironical maybe, but the point is that you have to enjoy that problem to understand and deal with it. We feel less problem on that, because if people tell that, Joshua Wolf, the famous venture capitalist, used to tell that failure come to the people who fail to imagine the failure. So even it is not happening to small one or two people or CEOs, or even the United States of America, the military intelligence or military department. They do the same thing in United States. They have done same in Afghanistan. They started a war there. It stayed for more than 2 decades, I believe. And it was problem was basically a short term. They were not thinking about a long term perspective to solve it, or not expecting any failure or anything like that. That is why all these military projects, what they done, or invasion, not in a bad way, I mean, what, because there is no reason to invade Afghanistan to Iraq and Syria, and all these people, just they have their own reason, and that got flowed also. But the point is not about that politics. Point is about the same military department failed to understand what is next, then what. All such things was not available. So there is something like a second level principle. When you make a decision, you should try to understand then what at the expense of what. Such thing compare to what. Also, if you come across a solution to a problem or a decision making, you come across two, X or Y, a binary, this one or that one, then most probably your decision making exercise is not complete. Most of the scenarios, binary is not good. Try to find a third option. That's one part of the thing. But there is another thinking approach by integrative thinking. A famous author, Roger Martin. We have a book in our channel, New Way to Think by Roger Martin. So Shane Parrish quoted Roger Martin telling that integrated thinking is like combining both, combining X and Y. Maybe you come across a solution to a problem as we can do this or we can do this. Why don't you think it together? Okay, we can do this, like we can reduce or we can increase the profit and we can increase the employees. Just an example, actually. So there will be sometime two contrasting opinions or binary option. You try to fit or you're forced to choose one among them. But that's not actually decision making. That is simply a choosing. You're doing an action to choose. That's not decision. So evaluate the options. Shane Parrish, when he was managing his company, he gave his company three options for decision making. He told that there is some decisions you can do yourself. You don't have to come to me. There are some decisions where you can think about it, but then you can give me, okay, we are going to decide, like you can inform. And third level, there is some decisions Shane want himself to take. Okay, I will only take it. Then that procedure was happening, but somehow Shane, that process was not, that rule was not working. Then Shane went to his mentor and tell that, okay, I implemented this in my company, but it looked like it is not working. So the mentor asked Shane, do you know what is really important for you, or what you value most? So initially Shane told, yes, I informed my team. I told them what is important for me. But then that mentor asked again, do you really know what important for you? You know yourself what is important. Until and unless you don't know what is important for you, you cannot communicate that to your team, and you cannot understand which one you want to take decision. If you don't understand, you cannot tell that to the team. And if the team don't understand which is important for you, they somehow end up everything in level 3, which you want to take this. So that whole procedure will get collapsed. So that's the point. Also, when you try to understand the root cause also, because George Marshall, when doing the Air Force Pacific in World War time, the Air Force in the Pacific area, the pilots was reluctant to fly. And George Marshall was trying to understand why, because it was one of the most efficient. They try to go in a next level in decision making and all. Try to understand what. So you want to get the information from the ground, because what is getting as information is that the pilots are not interested to fly. But what really I got an answer was that the 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 mechanics who work at late night, they have to work with lights, and the insects and mosquitoes will come at night, and that is creating malaria and all. Because of the malaria being infected to the mechanics, the pilots who drive that flight the coming days, they are not interested to fly that air flight, like aeroplanes, because of that reason. So that was the main reason the pilots are telling they're not interested to fly. So if you solve the mosquito problem, you will get the pilots. That somehow the you will not think it directly. When you understand the pilots are not interested to fly, you will think that maybe they are fearful, or they are having political issues, or they have some other pressures or something like. So there should be two ways to get information on a scenario. First one is high fidelity, high five principle. You should get it to the from the close to the source, like what George Marshall done. He get it to the source from where the issue is happening. You capture it from there. Then he understand, like what that dog welfare team was trying to understand, from where this issue is happening. The moment when the owners of the dogs were not able to manage a dog as the member of their family, they are giving it away. That's one part of the thing. There is another thing called, as I mentioned, high X principle or high expert principle, what we come across earlier, like chef and line cook. If you have a problem with the food, then it's not good to ask the waiter. It's good to go to the kitchen and then ask the chef. Or chef will be knowing better than someone else, because he has access to a lot of people how it is happening. So the source is there. The food is cooking from the cooking stove, there is a problem. But if something is on the service, then that's another. So that's the point. Even Leonardo da Vinci used to mention about this high X principle, because a lot of the time you are not supposed to be expert on all the topics. So you are supposed to ask support from the people to get the support and all. So he's tell that I have to find an expert in hydraulics to understand hydraulics, all these things. So feel free to get consultancy, get expertise, or learn from other people. It's not necessary you have to go to a person. Like, you can learn from the history, from the books and all these things, but try to take that expertise, knowledge, high fidelity source, and consultancy and best practices. But best practices and standards, as I mentioned, it may somehow fit into that social default. So don't take it for granted. Standards are not something like something above like that. It is an average thing what is being done by social best practices like that. But still, that is useful as a starting point. Learn from your decisions. When decision is happening, focus on the process than outcome, because you always have an opportunity to learn whether you were right or wrong, and feel free to enjoy being wrong. In Think Again, the book by Adam Grant, he explained how much excited was Daniel Kahneman when he explained a topic, and after a seminar, Kahneman come to Adam Grant as telling, okay, I was excited to feel that okay, I was wrong. So feel free to excite and learn from being wrong. But it doesn't mean that you have to always just do something to get wrong. But the point is that you should make a decision making in some way. There should be some transparency in that. That will be appreciated by the whole community, everybody. Even Charles Dickens has a famous character in Ebenezer Scrooge. He's telling that that character is getting visited by three spirits, by past, present, and future. They are giving him an opportunity to understand the past, his present, and future. But the good thing was that when the Scrooge was getting an opportunity to see the future, he asked for a second chance and corrected. So, for sure, you have to think now based on your past experience, but looking at the future. Future is not really going to be certain. That is the characteristics of future. So that's somehow a conclusion of the book. If you like to read similar thinking approach, we would like to add the books here, New Way to Think. Feel free to check out that book also. It is something by Roger Martin, a Rothman School. He's a thinker number one by Thinker 50 and all, and the book is by Harvard Business. Until we come across by next book, feel free to enjoy our book. Please do support us with subscriptions and all if you really find value in our summaries and all. Until then, bye for now.